Now broadcasting from the Next Gen Conservative Studio in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report with Sam Whitfield.
Well, are we live? I sure as heck hope we are. It always takes Rumble.
We'll do it live.
It always takes Rumble like a second, I've noticed, to actually say that we're live. After I hit the live button, it's still not instantaneous. But it's free for all Friday. Kind of a new format for the show where we just kind of talk about whatever. So welcome, everyone. Now,
just so happened there's a lot to talk about this week, and I had to cut early. I apologize for that to you as well as the audience. Life called, cut out a little early on the Wednesday show.
Well,
that's called being a dad.
well, listen, Max. This is Mersh from Nightwave Radio and Revenge of the Sis, and what you don't understand, Max, is that your show should come first before everyone else.
Yeah.
If you want to be a serious player, if you want to be like Dick Masterson, the biggest guy in the space. Because we all know that Dick Masterson, he's a household name, right? Everyone knows who Dick Masterson is. You should want to be more like Dick.
The funniest thing about that is I never fucking heard of Dick Masterson. Am I the only one?
No,
I never heard of this fucking guy. And then Jim became friends with him, and that's when I first heard of him, but I really didn't listen to his show or anything. I was like, oh, that guy knows Jim or whatever.
Literally.
When I finally watched his show, I realized the comedic genius that he is, because what he does is he yells into his microphone like this.
No, honestly, the first time I had
Sam Kinison called, he wants his bit back.
honestly, the first time I'd heard of Dick Masterson was when Merch was ranting at me and saying, "You'll never be as big as Dick Masterson," and I'm like, "Who?"
Yeah. It's funny because I guess he was a hanger-on of Opie and Anthony and then got his own show. If you said Opie and Anthony, most people would know who the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I feel like Dick Masterson, it seems like he got into radio during the death of radio and has kind of transitioned into being an online guy instead, a podcast guy. And so that's probably why nobody ever heard of him, because he was on the radio when nobody fucking listened to the radio anymore.
Yeah, well, so from what I've been able to gather on Dick Masterson, and maybe someone can kind of fill us both in, but to me, from what I've been able to piece together, Dick Masterson, like you said, he started off on radio when radio was basically dying. But then he kind of missed the train of this isn't really a good comparison now, but say what you will, but back in the day, Crowder and all those folks, they did have serious clout in the podcast game, but Dick missed the train on getting into Crowder.
Well, it seems like he didn't think that the podcast thing was a viable thing. A lot of radio, it's an inside radio thing, I guess. I talk to still talk to radio people, and
so do I.
They still think, a lot of them still think that one day they're going to come back for particularly talk, right? They feel like music is pretty much dead on the radio. The only people listen, people listen to music in their car on the radio. because they didn't bring a CD or something, right? Like nobody really listens to the radio anymore as such. They think that there would be a comeback for it in the talk/podcast type sector. But here's my thing. It's actually just not convenient to listen to the radio anymore. It used to be the most convenient. Now it's only convenient if you're in your car, you can't hook it up to your phone or some shit to play music, and you didn't bring a CD, so you turn the radio on. It's not actually convenient. It's just like a last resort for most people. Or a habit. A lot of people listen to radio in the morning on their way to work because they've done it every day for 40 fucking years. They listen to the same channel. I just don't see a comeback. But at the time in the radio industry, they thought this is just a bump in the road. You know, these podcasters, they're not professional. People want that high production level. People want to not. Another thing is,
which to be fair, if I can interject, I can kind of understand that mindset, because back when I mean, I've shared this story with you, but back when I started podcasting, when I was still in high school and living in Denver, my goal was to like have the podcast as like an audition tape almost, to like get on air on my local radio station in Denver. So
well, they had that advantage in polish for the longest time.
Yeah.
The radio would have put on a better show because they're multi-million-dollar companies, and they also don't have to deal with the visual aspect. And so radio execs just figured the podcasting thing, it's a niche thing. It's never going to catch on. Now that it has, they're all trying to get in on it. But the other thing, and this you might find interesting, is the kind of mentality towards censorship in the radio industry. And when I say that, I don't mean political censorship like we've been facing, but very base level sense. Like, you can't say fuck. They actually think that that a wider audience prefers clean content and doesn't want any vulgarity or any questionable content or anything like that's the reason radio became squeaky clean in the 90s, is because that did kind of bear out. And then they laid back on it in the 2000s. Like, they censored more this is something that people don't understand if you don't know the history of radio in this country. They censored more base level like curse words in the 90s than they did in the 80s or the 70s, because of the rise of stuff like gangster rap and, you know, Two Live Crew and some of the more extreme metal bands of the day. They went whole hog on censorship because the thought process was that will alienate dad with kids. That's going to alienate mom driving her kids to school, soccer practice, or whatever.
Yeah.
They eased back on that in the 2000s. You'll notice that from the 2000s forward, they became much more lax on the radio. But the higher ups in radio want it to be like the 90s. They want everything squeaky clean. They don't want their DJs to have political takes, not even safe political takes. They will tell you specifically, do this ad for the Pride Day, but you're not even really supposed to like hype up Pride Day. You're just like, this is the ad read, right? Or this is the thing that's happening. You're not supposed to weigh in on it. You're not supposed to make jokes about it. You're not supposed to have an opinion on it. And that's what they think sells. And I know that's a little long-winded way to get to it, but at the end of the day, that's why podcasting is become a thing, and live streaming and all of this is because people actually want unfiltered to some degree, and they're willing to trade the polish for it too. One guy with a webcam, not even a good webcam, can enthrall tens of thousands of listeners that follow everything that they do. Jim's a perfect example. This is a guy that's been using the same gamer headset for like 20 years. And
so much
he doesn't have high production values or anything like that, and he's super popular.
Well, so much so that that old like USB headset mic, like that's old. That's like old technology, but like the sound that headset produces like is almost unique to him, if that makes any sense.
if it works, I'd stick with it too. I stuck with this mic for quite a long time. But that's what people want. They want unpolished, unfiltered, uncensored. They want people's political opinions. Like, and radio has the exact opposite mentality. And that is why radio is doomed. Radio, as we know it, cannot continue to function the way that they have been, because the ad model is starting to fall apart because nobody listens to the radio.
And then the barrier to entry to get on to radio, right? It used to be, and I might be oversimplifying this a little bit, but for a long time it seemed like if you had talent and you could put some effort into a show, you could get on pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
They even used to have like public access radio, right?
Well, that's to be fair, that's different. You buy time on there.
Yeah, I know that's a bit different, but still,
I've been on public access television and radio way back in the day. If anybody finds that, it'd be hilarious. I'll laugh with you because I was a corny, cringy teenager. However, I will say this: how you used to get into radio was the way I got in. Is you know a guy, and then you take an internship, right? And
yeah,
it sucks as an intern. I was very lucky that the guy who did their 3 a.m. show on Saturdays or whatever had quit the company. So as an intern, they put me on the air, and that's how you used to get into it. You'd intern a little bit so you know how everything works. And one day the boss is like, "Hey, I got a slot. You're in it," and you sink or swim. Now, it's a lot easier to sink or swim at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, but I ended up moving that towards. I've told this before, I think on your show even. I quit because of all the censorship and corporatism and went internet radio and found it much more fulfilling. But how do you get into radio then? Was know a guy, internship, right? Or maybe you go to school for it and you take an internship. Either way, you take an internship and move your way up the pecking order if you're talented. Now, first and foremost, you better have a communications degree. They're not even going to look at you for an internship if you don't have a communications degree. Reason being that I think that's a negative is because what they teach in communications now and what they used to teach in radio, very different things. This is why there's so few great radio people on the internet. Jim might be the closest.
Well, okay. Speaking as someone who has both a technical writing communications degree and as someone who, I mean, I've told this story before too. Like, so when I was still 17 at the time, and there was this local like conservative talk station in Denver, KNUS. It's still around, and there was a conservative, like, conference or something that I went to, and I met some of the local radio guys, and one of them was Bill Rogan, who did sports for them. He did play-by-play for
Right.
for the Colorado Avalanche at some point. And I got to talking to him, and he, and I told him about like the podcast, and he was like, "Well, do you have anything that you could send me?" And as it turned out, like, I actually had with me a USB, like one of those thumb drives with a couple of like MP3, podcast files of my show. So he listened to them, and like the next morning, because this was like at a hotel it was like a 3-day thing. So I gave it to him on Friday night. He listened to it like that night, I guess, came back to me the next day and said, "Wow, this is really good. Let me talk to the station manager about you." Right? So I'm thinking like, yes, I've at least got like an internship or something, after I get out of high school. right? Like, I'm going the Rush Limbaugh route here. Station manager comes over and says, hey, you know, I really like your stuff. It's clear that you've got talent. However, Salem, and this is the other thing, they're owned by Salem Radio. And he said, you know, Salem's corporate bylines changed a few years ago, and now you have to have a communications degree. And
Right.
I'm like,
And that's not so Salem is, I believe, now a part of Clear Channel. Almost everything is.
yeah.
Clear Channel is radio at this point, and that's why it's dying. You know, all the things I said are Clear Channel decisions that they're making, and I try not to be too critical because I have friends that work in the industry still, and I don't think it's the worst thing ever. I just think the trajectory that Clear Channel's taking radio down ends with essentially the death of radio as we know it. But
yeah,
how you get in now is you're going to be a guy who's got a communications degree. Then they'll probably want you to have an English degree too, or some other degree as well. And then they'll probably also want experience, and it's really tough to get an internship now. And so you still have to know somebody. So you have to know somebody is still the thing, but now you have to know somebody and also have all these qualifications and then still get lucky because there's so many people for some reason. I'm the guy that ran away from radio kicking and screaming in 2004. But for some reason, people still think there's huge career in radio. Let me tell you something. There's not. There's not.
No.
You're not going to be Rush. You're not going to be any of these. You're not going to be Bill O'Reilly. You're not going to be any of that on the radio. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
I mean,
you're gonna press the button to play the new Nicki Minaj song and say how much you love it 14 times a day, and that's your job.
Yeah,
that's your career in radio. Just so you know, you press the button and you play Wet Ass Pussy, and you say that's been Wet Ass Pussy on 92.3 KWFM. Like, that's what you're gonna do. That's what you're gonna do. You're not gonna be telling jokes, right? And if you do tell any jokes, they're going to be written for you. And they're going to not only going to tell you what to say, but they're going to train you before you go into the bit on how to say it. They're going to be like, okay, so when you say knock, knock, you got to really tone it down. Okay. And then the punchline, you go up, like, they do this shit. I wish people could experience the bullshit that is modern corporate content creation firsthand the way I have. Because it's really easy to pick it apart and shit on it. But the funny thing is, how do you fix some of these problems without tearing the whole fucking thing down? I honestly don't know. As specifically with radio, I think that radio is missing out on, like, what could radio be good for in the current year, right? Sports, right? A lot of people go out the house. They like their sports ball game, and they want to watch it, but shit happens. You can't watch it. Sports on the radio. I think people do still listen to that. Actually,
that's pretty much all I listen to the radio for anymore.
Right.
And it's mostly because, and like,
there's
honestly,
no more morning zoos. Like, Dick would have been the tail end of the morning zoo, Opie and Anthony, Howard Stern shit, because they all moved off to other platforms when they started getting censored. So you're not going to find the good, like, comedic DJ stuff like you would have 10, 20 years ago, right?
No.
You're not going to find, I mean, Rush is not with us anymore. There is nobody as good as him on talk radio. There's a couple people that I like, but I don't listen to them on the radio. I listen to them on a podcast.
Yeah, one of my friends, it was not Morpheus, but it was actually Black Pill Phil, who is on Twitter. He pops in on the show on occasion. He said to me after Rush died, and I think this is actually a pretty good point, that, like, if Rush Limbaugh was trying to start out today, he wouldn't be able, like, he'd be a podcaster, or, like, you know, or they would have never, like, given him another chance on radio.
Yeah, he wouldn't have got in. He doesn't have the qualifications. That's one. I mean, he went to
Yeah.
school for radio, but that's not a communications degree. That's an old school broadcasting degree, which is like I'm saying, they're very different. All right, what you learn in communications today in college is nothing like what you would have learned in broadcasting in 1970 or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I mean, he dropped. He was a college dropout too. So like
Right.
that was that. Yeah, that would have. But like, even if he had gotten, like had gone through the process, like he would have gotten fired just being him, and that would have
Yeah.
been it.
Yeah, nowadays he wouldn't have got past the first broadcast. He's the only reason there was conservative talk radio, right? Like he was the only one doing it in the 80s and 90s at all.
Yeah.
At least until the late 90s when other people realized that there was a market. I mean, the guy was getting 30 to 60 million listeners every day. Now, that number's inflated. The thing about radio, the numbers are kind of inflated because it's an estimate. They can't actually tell how many people tuned in. But two, it's not everybody that listened to the full show, right? It's anybody that scanned over the channel as the show was on.
Yeah.
So 60 million people didn't actually listen to the full Rush Limbaugh show every day, but 60 million people were exposed to him for, I forget how long you have to stay on the channel. It's like 30 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, it's something,
it's the same reason I go to fucking bat on YouTube and Rumble to some degree about their fucking fake view counts, because when you're counting the numbers to show how good your platform is doing, it gets a little dicey. And do I think that all of these platforms fudge their viewer numbers? Yes, 100% I do, Rumble included. Sorry, Rumble, but you kind of do. Mersh didn't get millions and millions of fucking views, Rumble. All right.
Yeah. Oh, wait. You mean to tell me that like, well, and I mean that is also the interesting thing, because I don't know if I share this with you, but like in like one of the last updates, they fixed a lot of the viewer count, and it turns out that contrary to what Shmuel, and in my defense, I kind of got excited about this too, but Shmuel and I both thought that the Kurt Doolittle interview had like 600 views in the first week, right? That was kind of what it was shaping up to be.
Mm-hmm.
I just went back, and it turns out that like it's only like 300. Still really good, just not like what we thought it was, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and that could have just been like people
it comes down to what is a view, right? This is just what I was just talking about. What is a view? Is a view somebody that sits down and watches the whole thing, a large portion of it, 10 seconds of it? Like, it's hard to say with all of these companies. That's why I say they all fudge the numbers, because I think that they do. I'm a subscriber to the dead internet theory that most people that you're talking to are bots, and nothing has come about to dissuade me from that position, that you're talking to a lot of people who aren't real. You're looking at a lot of results that are puffed up. One thing you can do is do a Google search on pizza, right? Just pizza, the word pizza. If you do that, it will tell you that there are billions of responses. But if you go through them and you actually go next page, you only get to about 40 pages of responses, and then they run out. So it's certainly not 8 billion responses. It's more like 150, right? Yeah. Shit like that. And so when I say the radio, I don't trust their fucking numbers. Television's the same way. Do you know how they get television ratings?
Well, it's all Nielsen. It's people that have a literal fucking box that.
Not anymore. Not anymore. It used to be in the 90s and early 2000s. They'd put a box in your house, And that's how they could tell. So if you're a Nielsen family, you essentially accounted for like 100 other families in your vicinity, right? So, oh, well, they're watching the thing. We're going to estimate that this many people is also watching the thing. That's how they used to get them. How they get them now is even worse. Nielsen families don't just get a box anymore. They get a survey. And you fill out the survey and they send you like $100. And so your survey accounts for lots and lots more people in your area that probably don't have the same tastes in television as you. And
yeah, I was gonna say that's as my friend Morpheus likes to say, that is sus as fuck.
Well, and think about this. Think about this. The demos, right? The demographics for those that aren't in the lingo of this kind of shit. How do they get 18 to 30? How many people 18 to 30 do you think sit down and fill out a little booklet about every television show they watched and then do a survey about how much they liked them once a month for a small payment? How many people in that age bracket do you think actually do that?
Like maybe 5% if we're being generous.
I think 5% is way too generous. The actual number, since it was a leading question, because I do know the answer, is less than 1%. Less than 1% of people between 18 and 30 are involved in the Nielsen rating system. So then how are they telling us how many people are watching when they don't? It's not even a representative sample.
Well, then that explains why we're always getting like shitty reality shows like the Kardashians and whatever this MILF Manor like reality show is, because it's that 1% that is so dumb that they love all that reality show crap.
Right. They're the 1% dumb enough to waste like hours and hours watching whatever on TV, writing it all down for, I said $100, but I bet you that's way too high. I bet you it's like $20. It used to be $5 back in the day. It was $5, so it can't be that high.
Shit. Well, I mean, but
boomers, just to contrast, boomers, who are the most TV watching demographic, it's about 5% of boomers who fill out the Nielsen stuff. So
yeah.
This is why TV is catered towards boomers and small children.
My mother did not own a television. Like, she did not have a television set like in her home when she was in her 20s, at all. And then like she didn't even get it until she moved in with my dad.
That makes her an outlier, because most boomers.
No. She and I talk all the time how she's an outlier.
Yeah, most boomers. I put it like this: boomers were the first generation to have an imaginary friend in their home that told them they're the most special person on earth from birth, and that's the television. And the reason it told them that they were so special is because that was the demographic they were advertising to. That's why there was so much kids content, and there were commercials in the 50s and 60s. They would put commercials for toys, even in the adult shows, because back then they had the sense to know, well, a lot of adults have kids, you know. TV was very fascinating. TV and broadcasting, like, it's been a strange fucking trip through human history.
Well, to be honest, I do miss seeing cigarette ads in like comic books too. That was pretty fucking based. I'm gonna be, you know.
Yeah. Now, you know, you can't even have a character smoke, even if it's part of their character, because you can't show it on screen. Again, it's this corpo. People don't want to see life as it is. They want to see life idealized. No, that's not true. People relate more to life as it is. There's a reason that more people relate to Peter Parker than Clark Kent, right? Not to say that people all hate Superman. That's not the case. A lot of people say they do, but it's not that people hate Superman. It's that Peter Parker is the messy, got shit going on, can't figure out all his shit, real life,
Right.
versus Superman, who doesn't, the only problem that he really has is not having Lois Lane find out that he's Superman. Right? Like, he doesn't
Right.
have real problems. And so people gravitate toward, that's why I said Peter Parker versus Clark Kent, not Spider-Man versus Superman. Because
Right.
they both don't have real life problems when they're in costume. But when they're not in costume, Peter has a lot of real life problems. People like that. It's the same with anything. If you can relate to something like you've been through, or you know somebody who has, or whatever, it relates to you better than the cookie cutter clean corporal bullshit. Nobody lives the cookie cutter clean corporal lifestyle. Nobody. We all, like, the corporals don't want you to know this, but we all take shits. Big sloppy shits. We are human. We are fallen. We are whatever, right? We're not beyond what we are, you know. But if you want to try and pretend like this is the clean corporal world where everything's perfect, motherfucker, people die at Disney World, okay? Like, give me a break. Come on. The happiest place on earth, motherfuckers be croaking.
Yeah, no, that is true.
They don't like it though. They fucking, if people are like dying on Disney, this is like a thing. They actually take them out of Disney so that they don't die at Disney if they can help it. So silly. It's like, bro, people are gonna die. You know what I mean? A small percentage of people in a situation are gonna fucking die. If you have as many people that go to Disneyland every year, Disney World or whatever the fuck, somebody is gonna not be in the greatest of health. Some accident is gonna happen, right? Shit happens. You know, that's life. And that is why the corpo clean, crisp broadcasting is dying a very horrific death. Whereas podcasting, which is unclean, so to speak, it's very raw. I mean, this is about as raw as it gets. Two guys with a fucking microphone talking shit. People like that, right? Whether it be Joe Rogan, right? Like, let's not even talk politic podcast.
Yeah.
People fucking love Joe Rogan. Most of the time, he ain't talking about politics. Most of the time, he's talking about weed and fucking machine elves and all that other fucking crap he's into, right? And people love that shit. That ain't clean. That ain't corporate. It was worth what, $200 million to Spotify, though.
Right. And that's the whole thing too. Is I think, you know, it's funny that you mentioned like this show. One of the other things that is appealing about podcasting too is you can mix it. You can mix it up. You can mix it up too, as we've done, because like when I started podcasting, like you had your political podcast, and then you had your sports podcast, and then you had there were all these categories. And now with like free form, you know, we talk a little politics, we've talked about radio, just the technicals of it for the past, you know.
It's not even about the technicals. It's mostly like radio nostalgia, but
yeah.
Look, that's my background, right? And it's, you know, important that I can actually share some stuff that people don't know. Like, most people have never been behind the scenes in the music industry at all. And like, people love that shit. I mean, that's why there's all these successful like behind the music and shit people love, but it sounds great when you're talking about Ozzy sniffing lines of ants, right? It sounds crazy and fantastical when you're talking about like what Motley Crue got up to in the 80s or something. But the majority of the music industry is boring, is grindy, is the creativity is just sapped right the fuck out of it. This is why most artists went indie. The one smart thing is like the music industry side of things. So I've been talking about radio all this time, right? But where do the record labels fall? Well, they have been on the ball, and I don't think people realize it. They have digitized very smartly in one other way they've kind of modernized as well. You see, nowadays you don't get signed to a major record label anymore, right?
Right.
That's not what happens. What happens is you start your own record label, and then they bring it in under their banner. Reason being is all they're going to do is publish your CDs. That's it. Or get your music onto Spotify or whatever. They're not going to, except in rare cases, fund you to make the album. Like, you have to do that yourself now, for the most part. Unless you're a well-known, like if you're fucking Metallica, then somebody's going to pay for your fucking recording, right? But if you're an up-and-coming band or rapper or whatever, you have to fucking do that yourself. You have to set up your own tours. You have to create and sell your own merchandise. And they offloaded all of that shit from the record labels onto the individual artists. So even artists, and you might be thinking, oh, that sounds like independent artists, right? But Kanye West isn't an independent artist, right? Eminem isn't an independent artist. Dr. Dre isn't an independent artist. All of them have their own record labels and a distribution deal. That's how the industry works now. And it's smart on their part. And what they did is they watched all these independent labels where the only thing they really needed was somebody to print their CDs. And at some point in the mid 2000s, they were like, hey, yo, what if we print your CDs for you? You know, and they were like, that would make things all these indie artists, that would make things a lot easier. I already know, because they missed out on the era where the record labels did all that shit for you, right? So it's very DIY to get yourself noticed in the music industry now. Right. You have to get word of mouth out there. You have to have that viral video. You have to have something for them to even pay attention to you, right? It's that's why so many artists just release their music online. If you ever wondered, there's so many independent artists.
And
for free most of the time, and then they ask you to go buy the full download of the fucking album or whatever. But you can totally stream it on Spotify. They do that because the money's not in the record sales, and it never really was, except for the record label.
Right.
The money's in touring and merchandise. That's where it's always been.
Yeah. Well, and now, like I have a lady friend who I went to high school with who, she's now she's an indie artist. She's an indie country artist, and she releases all of her songs as singles.
Yeah.
And I actually talked to her. We still chat like on, Facebook Messenger. And I asked her, I'm like, so when are you gonna release, an album of music? And she's like, are you kidding me? It's too expensive to produce a whole album. It's expensive just to get, suited time for one single. Now.
That's how a lot of artists do it. And what I would suggest to this woman is what a lot of them end up doing: take those singles, right? Put them on a record, have 300 copies made, sell them for $20. Your fans will buy that shit.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing. When you're doing it all yourself like that, you actually don't need to make all that much money. Here's a great, I hate to get too much into the music biz stuff, but it's, it is interesting when you think about it. How much money when he was signed, not now, because now it's the whole independent thing, but when he was signed to a record deal, how much money per album do you think that Eminem got? Mind you, the average price of an album at the time was $15. What part of that $15 do you think Eminem received? And I pick Eminem because he was the biggest artist in the world at the time, right?
Okay. You're asking how much money he received personally
per record, yes.
Okay, and we're talking after. We're talking after studio fees, after personnel gets paid.
After everybody gets their cut, what is Eminem's cut?
From $15, probably like $1.25, maybe.
Yeah, actually. Now, because it's the same genre, but not a big label, right? The Insane Clown Posse owned their own record label. They were one of the first independent record labels in the country. How much do you think they made per record? They sold a lot less, right? A lot less, right? Eminem sold like 15 million of one of his records. Their biggest selling record of all time was 2 million, and that was in a studio, so that one doesn't even count towards this. So we're talking they sell maybe 500 to 700,000 records. How much do you think an independent artist at the same time period got per record?
Probably like $12.
You're actually really good at this. You're actually really good at this. Most people don't know that.
Well, yeah,
Most people wouldn't even be able to guess.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, an independent, the point being, an independent artist made 10 times as much per record sold as the biggest artist in the world.
Yeah, so I mean, the other thing too is my late grandfather, the one who just passed in February, he was in publishing. He wrote like two. Well, he wasn't in publishing. He was in human resources. Back in the
He worked at a publisher to some degree. Yeah, like he's in.
Yeah,
I would call that in publishing.
Well, point is he wrote two business books that were like very successful back in the 80s, and so he worked with the traditional publishing method, and he explained the process of like writing the manuscript and having to meet with agents and doing the revisions and all that stuff. And he said it was a pain in the ass, but that was all you had. Then when I moved to Florida, like almost 10 years ago now, that was when Amazon, and yes, I know the audience, I know that part of my audience hates Amazon because big corpo or whatever. I get that. But
as corpos go, I don't find them particularly bad.
Well, neither do I. Specifically for this reason, around the time I moved here, they opened up Kindle Crate and basically said, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna let anyone publish their books on, Kindle, and we're just gonna, open up the marketplace." So, long story short, my grandfather, who was still very savvy, took one of these books that he had written back in like 1990, reworked it a bit, and because he was very savvy, he understood like social media and whatnot, and he kind of rewrote it to make it, more, I guess, updated for the time, published it on Amazon Kindle, and now, was a New York Times bestseller? No, but he actually sold a couple hundred.
But he was able to extend
ebooks copies.
Take something old, right? He was able to take something he'd already done and rework it and sell it for more. There's a guy that does that in gaming. I can't think of his name. Spiderweb Games. They've been making like these really long, really autistic RPG games since the 90s, but they're good, right? They're well written, they're well put together. And he's been remastering those games every couple of years to make sure that they're like as modern as can be for fucking 25 years. And he makes a lot of money doing it. I don't think he's released a new game in like 15 years. He just keeps remastering the old ones, and more power to him. But that's the power of self-publishing. And that's why I walked away from radio. And when I said I was in the music industry, I only dealt with indie artists, right? I never... it's the same with like, I've published a couple books through self-publishing back in the day. Nothing I would shill or anybody would go find, but that was like, it was like magic, like you could just publish, and the internet's the same thing. To me, when I first heard about internet radio after I had just left the radio, I was like, this is amazing. I can just do a show. Now, back then, back in my day, we were covered by the radio loophole. The radio loophole means that if you're a radio station, you can play music. And so I did. I've played music for years. I got rid of my 3 a.m. time slot. I got the midnight time slot, which is actually really good for the radio and particularly the kind of shit that I was playing. And it fucking was amazing. No one ever told me what to say, not once.
That
the guy that ran the station was like, "Yeah, you say whatever you want."
when I started podcasting, you could still play like actual like and when I say actual music, I don't mean that like royalty free music isn't still music, because it is, but you could play like songs that like people knew. So like I would play like the Beatles as like bumper music on one show, and then like the Who. I would have like a rotation of like
I was
music.
kind of limited on that in the sense like I was serving an audience.
Well,
And
yeah,
that audience wanted like cutting edge, hardcore, underground hip hop and metal. And
sure.
that's what we play. But that never stopped me from playing Johnny Cash. That never stopped me from playing shit that I like. And the other thing is, and this was like, I still think that this was so groundbreaking for the time. And I wish I could do something like this today, but I don't think it's possible. Where I used to just say, because it was internet, it's a whole different format. You can interact with people. That was my favorite fucking part. Interact with the audience directly, not just call-ins anymore, but you have a chat and you have like people can send you stuff. And so I was like, hey, this is like 2004, 2005. Send me your shitty rap song. I'll play it. And then the audience will vote on it. And if people like it, I'll play it in rotation. And
Yeah.
I met lifelong friends that way. Great artists that I've been friends with for a very long time, low key, actually submitted to me one of his songs in those days. And it was so fucking good. I didn't even care what the audience voted. I was like, I'm going to play this again. Fuck you.
Yeah.
But they all loved it. And so I got him and I did an interview with him, talked to him about music. I've done a couple interviews with Low Key over the years. He's a really cool guy. But that's how it used to be. It was just the Wild West. We're playing music. We're trying to figure out the format, trying to figure out how you interact with the audience, right? A lot of people still haven't figured that part out. Interacting with the chat online is tricky business if you're fucking stupid.
Well, yeah, I mean, so here's
Pro tip for streamers. Somebody says something super nasty in chat that actually upsets you, just don't read it. Just ignore them.
Yeah, don't well, it also, pro tip, don't be like Owen Benjamin and literally read the chat out loud, like
Yeah.
as you're reading it for the first time, because that's what trolls count on, is you not.
Also shout out to Silly Kelly 420 in the chat who also guessed $1 for Eminem.
Oh, excellent.
And that's how you interact with chat. I saw something positive and I said it. But the other thing is have a sense of humor, right? Because I know if I read something mean written about Sam in chat, he's just gonna laugh, right? And so like that's what you do. You could always be like, leave chat, I hate you. That's gonna wind you up. That's gonna wind you up on Kiwi Farms, though, and live stream fails and everything else. Like, chat does what chat does. You just gotta let them do it.
And
on the flip side, though, don't ban them. Like, that's not a good idea.
That is another thing, though. Okay. So like, I wasn't necessarily like trained on like broadcasting, but like having grown up like listening to Rush Limbaugh as often as I did, like there's certain like etiquette, or I wouldn't really say etiquette, but there's stuff you pick up along the way, and stuff that I picked up that I to this day audience appreciation is a big thing that Rush always talked about. Like, he wouldn't be. He always said, "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the audience," and that is night and day from someone who's like, and I know this is a horrible example, but Ethan Ralph, who's like, "I'm the greatest in the sector. You know, you all ain't shit without me. You know, and give me money, basically, right? Like,
Mhm.
like all the things that you don't do in radio, Ralph does, and he has done for
I would
years.
s- I would say not just him. Most streamers, particularly the grift types, right, that are constantly begging for donations, goes against everything traditional radio stands for. You're not supposed to ask them to just throw money at you. You're supposed to sell them something.
Yeah, which by the way,
Because spoiler alert, eventually people resent you when you're constantly being like, I need you to send me money right now.
yeah, we yeah. So there's this guy. He's still on Twitter, but back during back when back when I was kind of like watching Owen Benjamin for the lulls. This was after the group had left the thing. Like, we were watching Owen, and Evil Eric, who was in our like hangout group, goes, "My God, this is worse than NPR public radio at this point," because Owen was literally doing like "we need your donations to keep this thing going," just like NPR used to do and still do. And
Well,
yeah.
but at least in the case of NPR or PBS or whatever, they're like publicly funded and they're not allowed to have like a corporate backer, and so it like makes sense. But also in the case of PBS and NPR, they do that spot once an hour. These guys will do it every 5 minutes, you know what I'm saying? And then they get pissy. You mentioned audience appreciation. I've never seen less of that than from streamers who didn't meet their goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Terry Gross, say what you will about Terry Gross, but she's not banning people from chat because they made a meme that hurt her feelings,
Right.
right?
Yep.
I mean,
No,
yeah.
it's a wild world now with streaming. Like you never like I'm still learning new shit all the time.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying that it's not. We're all still learning. I'm just saying that like I think a lot of these people who are in streaming, I don't think they ever like watch like even like a regular like local news broadcast before, because they just have like no technique whatsoever for radio, it seems, or broadcasting of any kind.
Yeah, I mean, I took a lot of broadcasting classes and things, and I still am not. And it's because I haven't been in radio the whole time, right? And I've been doing my own
Sure.
thing, so I'm less disciplined than maybe I should be. There's a bit more ums and ahs. But one thing I'm great at is filling dead air, right? With whatever. Like
Yes.
people think I'm being rude too, because they've never been in traditional media of any kind. And so like you'll be not like I do this on your show all the time. If you're not talking and it doesn't look like you have something to say imminently, I'm gonna fill for time. That's because it's instinct for me, because I've been doing this kind of content for so long. And people
Yeah.
think I'm doing it to step over them. It's not. It's just if you leave 5 seconds of dead air, that's torture to an audience.
Which, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the it's not the reason, but it is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Max onto the show and why he is here, because he's good at filling dead air. And when you have to manage when I have to manage tabs and whatnot and gather stuff for the show, it's not always easy for me to multitask. So for him and for Shmuley to fill dead air, it's a win-win. He gets to say insightful shit.
People don't realize how important that is. I'm not just bullshitting to talk over Sam. I'm not just trying to drown everybody out. I'm not trying to be the focal point of the show. It's just like, okay, nobody's saying anything. It's, I got to carry the conversation forward. That's something that was beat into me quite extensively in the early days. And that's one, I still screw up and I and awe on occasion.
Yeah.
Or I use local vernacular that maybe not everybody understands. You're not supposed to do that either. But I think it's wicked cool anyway.
Love it. Well, with the whole ums and ahs thing too, as I just said that, do you think that's really that much of an issue now with like podcasting?
No, because the bar has been lowered so low. Like you ever watch TikTok live streams? I've watched a few TikTok live streams.
Oh god. Let me put it this way. I've never watched a whole TikTok live
just
stream.
Some bitch with her phone like, "Hey guys, I'm so cool." And they're always looking like I'm trying to do the eye thing where I'm not looking at the phone and then looking at it because they do that. And they and ah and they sit there, I don't know, 5 minutes. I mean, God, Ralph does this, right? He just sits there and doesn't say anything, and he's like watching CNN or something. Like I could never do that. I do reaction stuff, right? But you've seen my show. If I have reaction stuff, A, I have it all set ready to go. B, there's a lot more of me talking. In fact, that's half the problem. When we try to get through a Dice Golden film, which is 5 hours fucking long, and I'm stopping to talk about it. Luckily, that film ground me down to where I didn't have much to say about 2 hours in. But I did, speaking of audience appreciation, I did promise my audience we would watch the whole fucking thing, and we sure did.
Well, that's what's so frustrating about again, I'll bring up Merch and Ralph to some extent. Is like Merch takes constant smoke breaks. Which is
leaves. He just leaves. I swear to God, if I ever did that on even internet radio, like I guess the cool thing with internet radio is I could play 3 songs in a row and go take a piss, right?
Well, yeah. What I'm saying though, Max, is like, he make like. If anything, Max, we're putting too much effort into the show and not making enough money. That's
been my problem for years, man. I'm an overachiever. Like I'm an artiste. God damn it.
So am I. Like maybe if I just maybe I just started the stream and then left it for 20 minutes. Maybe we would get like $500 or something, because it seemed like all of these streamers who just like put next to nothing or just are constantly yelling at chat.
What I think it is? You know what I think it is? Is we don't come off like guys who need the donations. Right? Like we're not constantly begging and complaining about being poor and saying, I just need $50 to get through the fucking week. So like people don't feel bad for us, which is fine, because don't donate to me. I don't need your money, right? Donate to Sam so he can make this a career.
Yeah,
it's not a career for me though.
Or the other thing too is it is summertime, folks, and it is you need to protect your eyes. So
just like I said, sell them a product, Sammy. Sell them a product.
Head down to the links for the show and click on the affiliate link for Shady Rays and get yourself 35% off your first pair, and and hey, in turn that'll give me 35% off another pair, and I'll get some money. So what are you waiting for? sunglasses at the fraction of a price of Ray-Bans, and by a fraction of price, I mean $50 compared to like $200. Can't beat that. And then 35% off that, plus free shipping. And
Well, let me ask you this,
Father's Day is
Sam.
coming up.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever been out, right? And it's a beautiful, bright, sunny day, right? And you go down to the beach, right? And there's this beautiful girl at the beach, and you're looking at her in her little bikini, and you're like, wow, she's beautiful. But then the sun is so goddamn bright. It's so goddamn bright out that you can't appreciate this beautiful sight set before you. And that is the moment where you're going to wish that you had some fucking shady rays. So click the link.
Yeah. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is
old school ad read style.
See, we've been weaving the ad reads into the show content. But you know who can't do an ad read or even an ad to save his life or his campaign is Ron DeSanctimonious.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever been a guy that's got a lot of potential, maybe could one day run for president, and decided, nah, fuck all that?
I mean,
that's Ron DeSantis.
Not me. Not me. I mean, I voted for a guy who unfortunately has. No, have you ever? Here's a real question. Have you ever had like a friend who has potential to do a whole lot
and becomes a pussy whipped bitch by some broad? Yes. Right. No, it's a serious comparison, I think, in a way, right? It's like you got that buddy, right? In my case, it was actually my brother, one of my brothers, and he gets his girlfriend, and all of a sudden he turns into, yes, dear, and he's doing shit that we would never do that. Like, why would you wear that stupid fucking shirt, bro? What is wrong with you? Oh, the girlfriend likes it. The girlfriend, she makes me feel special. That's Ron DeSantis right now with the Uniparty. He is a pussy whip bitch.
So, yeah, we can agree on that. But like, in all honesty, like I was sitting on the I wouldn't say I was sitting on the fence, but I was still kind of like, okay, well, if Trump doesn't get in, maybe I could vote for him. But now with him doing that, like, okay, so here's my question.
The deep fake? Is it the deep fake? Or is it...
Yeah.
Because there's a couple things he's done recently, but the deep fake is pretty rough.
Okay, yeah. So specifically with the deep fake, right? The argument for DeSantis that that we've always heard from the Ron camp is, well, he's Trump without Trump's assholish behavior, and he's not a bully like Trump. But I'm sorry, Ron kind of threw that out the fucking window
when he unleashed the dirtiest campaign ad of all time. This is worse than when George W. Bush said that John McCain had an illegitimate black son. It's actually worse attack than that, I would say.
Wait.
Because it's fake. It's fucking fake.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, like Trump, like let's not fucking pretend like actual history didn't happen. I watched when they were doing those the news conferences with Trump every day during the pandemic. I watched all of them. I watched it until they stopped showing it. And I'm gonna tell you right now that this notion that Trump agreed with Fauci, where the fuck did that come from? This man, Trump, lambasted Fauci on national television many, many times and said he was wrong. And he was more leaning on that whatever the other broad that they ended up firing. He listened to her a hell of a lot more. He was a lot more respectful to her. He was not nice to Fauci. That's why the left started to love Fauci, is because they saw him as being picked on by Trump and Trump bad. Like they and there were some things early on, especially that Trump agreed with him on, But like, yeah, newsflash to all the people angry about Fauci lying, he lied to Trump too. And
Yeah,
Trump
well,
figured it out and started calling him out on it. And then if you notice, when he really started calling Fauci out in press conferences, and those are all a matter of public record, you go back and watch them and you see if what I'm saying is fucking true. But the last like week's worth, he was in Fauci's fucking face. He was saying, I don't know, maybe we should fire him and get somebody else in here. And that was when all the major networks said, we're not going to cover the press conference anymore.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, in the very beginning of the pandemic, no one knew what the fuck COVID was. Like,
Right.
There actually was right. I think we can all agree that like the lockdowns went on for way too long. We can all agree on that now. But back then, nobody knew what this was.
The questions being presented to Trump were valid, and we found them to be not as big a deal as we thought. One of the questions was, will the hospitals be overrun? That was a serious concern. I understand that a lot of people now are like, well, COVID was never that bad. It was never going to happen. We didn't know that, right? And so the idea of like, okay, can everybody stay home for about 2 weeks so we can figure this out and see the capacity of the hospitals and maybe work on, Trump even specifically said therapeutics. He didn't even say a vaccine at first. He said therapeutics because therapeutics are actually going to make a bigger deal than a vaccine. That's true with the flu. It's true with everything, right? If you have a med that you can take to mitigate the symptoms, that's actually better than a vaccine in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but
that was all reasonable. It's that at that point, I feel like Fauci knew he had them by the balls, and suddenly he was the dictator of Earth, and he wasn't going to let that go. And the news media loved him for it, so they pushed him too. But Trump was not hugging Dr. Fauci during those press conferences. He called him a son of a bitch at one point. Like, nobody remembers this? Was I the only one there?
No,
Trump isn't buddies with Fauci. Jesus Christ.
No,
and I could expect that attack maybe from a Democrat, but to come from Ron DeSantis, when I say to sell out, man, he's De Brutus now, right? Ron De Brutus stabbing his Caesar right in the fucking back.
And it's gotten so bad that even a lot of the people who were like, even a lot of the people I know who were for DeSantis that I respect, they're like, well, I can't really vote for, I'm not sure I can vote for DeSantis now. He really fucked up.
Now he can be deep fake DeSantis or dishonest DeSantis. Let's add some new ones.
I believe I called him deep fake DeSantis yesterday, or let me see. What did I call him?
I loved it. I loved it because, like, here's a little insider for the fucking the listener. Sam comes into the Gilded server, and he's just like, "Did DeSantis really do a deep fake ad on Trump?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "No, really." Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I'm like, did DeSantis? And then Max is like, yes. And then I'm like, oh, Morpheus actually sent me the thing. Holy shit, this is fucking bad. So
I don't know how they thought that wasn't gonna go badly. That's
the $1 million question, right? Like, who thought that was going to work?
I don't know. It's the same thing I've been asking. I said I had a theory for you earlier, so but I wanted to get it on air. Is why is he going to run at all? Because he knows that Trump is just trouncing him in the polls. It didn't make sense. I kept saying this on the show. Why are you doing this to yourself? And I think I figured out the answer.
Yeah, I know.
Because they told him, somebody told him, well, if we don't get him on the Manhattan charges, then we're going to get him on these new DOJ charges that are coming out. Because what are the odds that DeSantis announces and then just a few days later, they charged Trump with 32 fucking counts. Yeah, I do think DeSantis is the face of the Uniparty, and more than that, I think this is the hot take. I think the Democrats want to get Trump out of the way, and I think they want DeSantis to beat Biden. And the reason is because they don't want another 4 years of Biden, because he doesn't listen to them. He doesn't. This is the thing about Biden, like a bunch of right wingers wouldn't understand, is that the left wing doesn't like what Biden's doing either. They're not happy with him at all because either he's not going far enough, or they don't like certain policies that he's done, like the Keystone XL pipeline is a pretty unpopular to close that one when everybody's paying through the nose for gasoline.
Yeah, well, and then
they don't think they can handle another 4 years of a Biden disaster. I actually think the rank and file Democrats want DeSantis because he's the boogeyman that they can control, versus Trump, who is the bull in the china shop, versus Biden, who just does whatever the fuck he wants. And sometimes, occasionally, they get what they want out of it, but not very often. And again, for everybody that thinks that Biden isn't making his own decisions, look at how goddamn incoherent they are next to each other. I think he's making all the decisions, to be honest with you. I think people aren't giving Biden enough credit for the things he's fucked up. I think Biden needs way more credit because I think he's making these decisions as an unhinged old man, and that sometimes they trick him into doing what they want with certain framing, right? Like,
I mean,
the generals didn't want to pull out of Afghanistan, but we had already agreed to pull out of Afghanistan. And so Biden's just like, hey, why don't we make this the worst pullout since Vietnam? That'll make everybody happy. There's no way the generals instructed him to do the pullout the way he did. There's no fucking way. So you could say Kamala or the administration or these people are leading him by the nose, but that one decision there, he sure as fuck wasn't listening to generals, because even Milley, who's his little butt buddy fucking leftist general, was like, yeah, we shouldn't pull out at all. Right? But if we do pull out, here's the plan for a pullout. This is how we're going to do it. None of that happened. So he wasn't being advised by the generals. And I just think Biden was like, listen here, Jack. We're just going to pull him out then. And they're like, Mr. President, we don't have enough transportation to get everybody out of Afghanistan in an immediate fashion. And he's like, just get them all out now. I told you I'm the president.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you basically think that Mr. Magoo is in fact running things, but he's
but he's Mr. Magoo.
Yeah, he's well, I mean, if you remember the whole gimmick of Mr. Magoo wasn't just that he was an old man that bumbled his way through life.
He couldn't see.
It was that he couldn't see, but like somehow Mr. Magoo always ended up like failing upwards into success.
But also, like, it's a good like that's the best Biden analogy I've ever heard is President Magoo, because he couldn't see clearly, right?
Right.
And so actually, Mr. Magoo, if you think about it, acted very rationally almost all the time based on what he thought was there. It's just that it wasn't a tiger. It wasn't a tiger. It was just a little dog. But like, he saw a tiger, so he acts like there's a tiger there. That's Joe Biden.
Yeah,
That's Joe Biden in a nutshell. He's like,
I've called him Mr. Magoo for years because that literally is how I see.
Except that he doesn't fail upwards. He just fails. That's the beauty of Biden. He's just like, Keystone XL, let's shut that down. We'll win over the Greens. It's like, okay, you might win over the Greens. What about everybody else who's going to pay way more gas? Fuck them. Let's just use up all the reserves. That'll never come back to bite us in the ass.
Oh, I didn't call him deepfake DeSantis. Sorry. Yesterday on Twitter, I called him Dirty DeSantis.
That is dirty. That deep fake was dirty. Damn. I'm saying if you're gonna deep fake a competing politician, I feel like he should have made Trump like make the video of Trump pissing on a bed and be like, yeah, see, it was real. That's a better deep fake than hugging DeSantis, hugging Fauci or whatever, right? It's like, oh, the P tape was real. Like that might actually move numbers, and then a lot of people would believe it was real anyway, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna all I'm saying, if you're gonna deep fake, you better be going balls deep fake. You know what I mean? None of this pussy shit. Oh, he hugged this guy, because that might have really happened. It's possible that there was an event somewhere where Trump shook his hand and gave him, because Trump's a very hands-on guy. He shakes everybody's hands and hugs them, right? So
Yeah.
it's not something that could be impossible. But then as soon as people find out it's fake, they're like, what the fuck? Why would you do that? But if you made a tape of Trump balls deep up in a big burly dude's ass, a lot of people would just assume that it's real. And they'd be like, oh my God, Trump's gay. All I'm saying is, if you're going to use the deep fake, use it to its full effect.
Yeah, just go. Well, I mean, so here's how bad things have gotten for DeSantis. Even Tim Pool, I'm in agreement with you, Max. Like Tim Pool is horrible, but even Tim Pool, Mr. Milquetoast fence sitter, was outraged by the deep fake.
Oh, he's not a fucking fence sitter anymore. He's a fucking... Yeah, I'm not surprised he would be outraged. It's exactly the kind of thing he gets fake outraged about. But yeah, everybody, even a lot of DeSantis supporters didn't find that.
Well, so here's the other thing. So DeSantis did that yesterday, right? Then Trump also later in the day, he got indicted for the umpteenth time, right? And so, like,
and he couldn't have just come out and been like this is what would make sense if I was DeSantis. It is wrong what the DOJ is doing. That's it. He doesn't have to say what. He doesn't have to go into detail. Just it's wrong.
Yeah.
He didn't do that the first time Trump got indicted, and that was when I knew.
Well, see though, here's what's interesting. The first time Trump got indicted, Ron didn't mention him by name. This time, Ron did use Trump by name, and I'm like, well, that's a bit scummy of you. Like, now he's trying to backtrack because he knows he fucks up with the deep fake. So now he's trying to appease Trump supporters. I guess it's not gonna work.
No, that's the thing. He was never gonna win over the Trump supporters. I don't know why he even tries. If you're gonna he's decided that he's gonna be the insurgent candidate. Act like one.
Well, okay, I can tell you why, Max. I can tell you exactly why he's trying to be Trump, right? Because I don't know about the papers over where you're at in Massachusetts, but here, the left was saying that DeSantis was actually worse than Trump because he's a lot more. He's Trump without the without the a-hole factor, so you can't make fun of DeSantis like you can with Trump, which makes him more dangerous. So I think DeSantis somehow has in his brain that he's like Trump 2.0, right? It's like all the wannabe podcasters who see themselves as Rush Limbaugh 2.0. There's only one though. You're not gonna be able to replace him.
Yeah, I think if they screw Trump out of the nomination, what's going to happen is you're going to see lower turnout in 2024 than we've ever seen before.
Well,
because I probably will not vote if that's the case, because at that point I have now decided that the elections are just so rigged that there's no point in me taking part of it.
yeah, me too. Because
Basically, DeSantis, you never get my vote. So I don't know. I don't know what you're doing.
well, I mean, I have to be honest. For me, the deep fake thing really was a turning point. Up until now, I would have said, okay, well, up until today, I would have said, okay, I might not like him, but I might not like everything, but I'll still vote for DeSantis because because he's not, the left. But by doing this deepfake thing, he pretty much revealed that in a lot of ways he is acting like a leftist. And
he's acting like pre-Trump GOP, which is the pussy whipped bitch I was talking about, right? It's like,
yeah,
hey guys, maybe we shouldn't spend so much money. Shut the fuck up, racist. Okay, sorry, sir. That's the GOP. If that's what we're gonna go back to, like ignoring the rigged election part, right? Like, let's say I don't believe that part of it. If we're gonna go back to that, I'm going to go back to leaving the GOP. I've not always been a registered Republican, and in fact, I wasn't for the longest time before Trump because it wasn't my party. And if it's gonna go back to that, it won't be my party. I'll figure out something else.
yeah, and see, as like I haven't registered at see, like I guess for me and for like I know people my age who have also said that they'll leave the Republican Party. So they're gonna lose lots of young people.
Most of them. Here's the thing that they don't get is that conservatives under 40 are overwhelmingly they might not support Trump over DeSantis right now, but they're overwhelmingly MAGA people anyway. That's why he's going around saying I'm just like Trump, but not as mean, because they're MAGA people. So you're just gonna give the MAGA people back over to the fucking the kind of Eye of Sauron, and then any of us that were principled or came in for that, millennials, especially millennials, is the biggest voting demographic now, and you don't like if you alienate them, the boomers aren't going to be here to save you in 20 years, bruh. You know what I'm saying? Like, the boomers are already not the biggest generation. They should not be the first concern of a lot of these politicians. And you might say, well, younger people don't vote. Yeah, which is exactly why the Republicans shouldn't spend a lot of time on Zoomers. But millennials are in the age bracket where you vote, and they do vote, and they vote overwhelmingly for Trump and MAGA candidates, at least the right-wing ones. So, like, yeah, maybe you need to refocus. Maybe the party does need to, going forward, represent its largest demographic, which is pro-MAGA millennials. That is the biggest group in the GOP right now.
Yeah. And if Biden somehow does if Trump ends up in prison, there will be riots in this country. Like, I'm not saying that to say that there should be riots or anything like that. I'm saying I think there will be.
I'm saying I'll hoist the black flag if they go that far.
Yeah.
Like, I will maybe not partake in a riot, but I will show moral support.
Oh yeah, I'm not discouraging that.
Because I'll tell you why. Because at that point, it's not a riot, it's not a political protest. It's a resistance. It's an actual resistance. Because at that point, if they're going to put the leading presidential candidate, not just leading the Republicans, but the leading presidential candidate who's beating everybody in the polls in jail, that's a banana republic. So it's no longer me just sit by and say, well, maybe we'll get him next time. At that point, It is an insurgency against a hostile fucking dictatorial fucking regime.
Yeah.
And yeah, I will support the people who oppose that. I don't think it's going that route. I don't think they're actually going to be able to put him in jail. Which means that I think basically my scenario requires them putting him in jail without the evidence to actually do so, which is Banana Republic shit.
I don't think they're gonna go that route anyway. Either, Max, but what I don't think they're gonna go that route either, Max. But
I think they want to. I just don't think they can.
Well, I would agree with both those statements either. But let me also say that if they somehow do manage it, I also wouldn't be surprised either, if that makes sense.
But I wouldn't be surprised either. I'm not. That's why I'm laying it out there. You know, when Biden quote unquote won in 2020, I sat down with my wife and I was like, "This is gonna suck. We're gonna be poor for a couple years. We're gonna have to tighten our budgets." And she was like, "Really? You think?" And I was like, "Oh, for sure." And that was in like November of 2020. So I knew this was coming, but this time, I haven't forgotten 2020. You can say whatever the fuck you want. I watched them pulling ballots out of the ceilings after they sent people home, bro. You can tell me no evidence all you want. I watched them pull the shit out of the fucking under the table. I saw Trump come out at 1 a.m. He comes out at 1 a.m. and says they're going to bring in 2 a.m. trucks of ballots. And then an hour later, I'm watching video. I was up. I was watching it live. They're pulling in fucking ballots from out of nowhere. They just got found. They just got found to have literally tampered with Dominion voting machines in Arizona in the last election in 2022. Nobody's talking about that. Where's Dominion's billion-dollar lawsuits about that? Why isn't that evidence in the lawsuit? The evidence that they actually are doing what is being claimed.
And here's the other thing too. Like, okay, so I get your theory about DeSantis being the uniparty candidate, and that may be the case now.
I'm not. I just want to clarify one thing. I'm not entirely sure he knows it.
Oh no, well, no. I would agree with you on that. He doesn't know that either. But to my point, Max, you're talking about the election fraud in Arizona last year. Believe me, and here is the one thing that I will say, like, this is also why it's so baffling to me why DeSantis, I guess, turned on Trump the way he did, because when DeSantis was running for re-election as Florida's governor last year, the Dems were literally like trying to do the same shit to get Charlie Crist re-elected. They got caught like stuffing ballot boxes or trying to, and like a couple of U.S. postal workers were caught like trying to dump like boxes of ballots with DeSantis's name on the side of the highway.
Well, because the truth is, and this hurts a lot of people, and it's the thing you weren't allowed to say anywhere, but the truth is that there's fraud in every election. Sometimes it's just around the edges. Sometimes it swings the whole fucking thing.
Right, but that's what I'm saying though, Max, is it baffles what baffles me is the fact that like DeSantis somehow thinks that because he's nicer than Trump, quote unquote, that he will be exempt from the same treatment.
I thought so too. Now I think to some degree he knows they're going to go easier on him than Trump. I just don't think he realizes it's because he's controlled opposition, because that's what he is.
Yeah. Well, I think they'll go easier on him, but I still think they fucking hate him.
Oh, they're still going to call him hate. Like, you can't control the far left, especially like the street activists, and they would hate him as much or more than Trump. Probably more, even though that's like no reason to, just because he's the guy now. So yeah, that's how they operate.
Yeah,
Because they called Bush Hitler. They called Romney Hitler. They called
Yeah.
McCain Hitler. They were right about McCain, you know, broken clocks and such. Everybody's been Hitler. Everybody's a racist. This is nothing new for them. It worked really well on Zoomers who consumed media that regurgitated that idea to them, and then they regurgitated it back and forth. The Zoomers liked that. They're the only ones. Nobody else did.
Yeah, well, the Zoomers literally they literally don't read history. They literally don't know like what World War II was. So their idea of a Nazi.
To be fair to Zoomers, their entire history that they've been taught is this modern revised leftist history anyway.
Yeah,
so it's
I
not
know.
entirely their fault.
I'm not saying it's their fault. What I'm saying is
that they don't have the capacity to discern based on actual historical context.
Yeah.
I got you. And that's true. I just wanted to point, like, I feel like I shit on Zoomers more than I should. And
Oh,
so
no,
I wanted
do.
to backtrack and say, look, what are they teaching these kids about history in school? Younger people I've talked to, when they talk about World War II and history that they learned in school, it literally amounts to the Holocaust. Like, they don't have a lot of like the geopolitics of what was going on or anything like that.
Yeah, and then even like studying the Holocaust, which I did, and you know, when I like the Jews were killed in the Holocaust, but there's so much more nuance like to the Holocaust too, and there was so much more to that whole genocide.
But the point is that that's all they've learned about, right?
Right.
And so from that perspective, without all the context, it's just like, well, Nazis bad. People who are bad now are like Nazis. That's why they do that. It's a guttural thing for them. And they've always done it, and they will do it with DeSantis. They'll do it again with Trump, obviously. Probably way worse than the first time. And whoever comes down the pike in 2028 and beyond, the left isn't going to stop calling everybody fucking Hitler just because DeSantis is nicer, which he's not. He's not, because he's a liar who puts out fake ads. That's way meaner than Trump's mean tweets. At least when Trump mean tweets, he's like, Rosie O'Donnell is fat. And you're like, she is fat, though. She do be fat.
Yeah, and people were like, oh. So here's the one I always get sick of is
called women fat pigs. Only Rosie.
Well, here's the
that's the best debate moment of all time, because they thought they had him up against the wall. You call women fat pigs. Just Rosie. Like deadpan as hell. I love Trump. That's the best shit ever. He's like, I'm not gonna deny that because I totally did that, but just Rosie.
Also, the fact that it was Megyn Kelly who, was the one who asked that question, which, I mean,
started a whole fucking story arc for her.
Yeah.
That one question sent her on quite the journey, you know.
Yeah, well, and then she was also the one who was like criticizing Trump for dating Playboy models, and then what do you know? People were starting to find her spicy pics.
Well, hey, here's the thing, right? Trump, morally, not my kind of guy. I get it though. He's rich, right? And he dated beautiful women, and would I prefer somebody that like married one woman and stayed with them? Yeah, because that's more relatable to me. But I do feel it's kind of dirty pool that people use his past, romantic entanglements against him, considering none of it's private. He's one of the most public people since the 80s, right? And everybody knows that he's divorced, and everybody knows that shit. It's not like in 2016 or 2015 when he announced that people didn't know this, right?
Well, and to be fair, like one of the things that I am actually this was one of the reasons why I was a big Trump fan. Like, in all seriousness, was because when all of the Playboy Playmate stuff came out, Trump was like, "Yeah, I I I fucked a couple Playmates, so what? I'm not dropping out." Whereas, like, for a comparison, Herman Cain back in 2012, who was my favorite candidate at the time to run against Obama, he was creaming everyone in the primaries. The left was panicking. They didn't want Herman Cain to debate Obama because
There's
there
less
was
chance he wins when it's two black guys.
yeah
This is literally it.
and also they couldn't play the, well, you're racist because you won't vote for Obama. They couldn't play that card, right? So Herman Cain is basically cleaning everyone's clock. Then someone uncovers a thing that he had an affair with, like, his secretary for, like, and it wasn't just like a one-time thing. It was like they had like a 25, like, Herman Cain was almost like loyal to his mistress and to his wife, weirdly enough. So that came out, and the Republicans were like, "Oh, well, you need to drop out because that doesn't necessarily, mesh with our moral standards or whatever." And he did. And then we got Romney. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Max. Like, Trump's past. I mean, there are lots of things, like, personality-wise, that I don't like about Trump. But, like, policy-wise, I've always believed he's the man for the job, and this is just what I don't get. When people complain at, like, Trump being mean, I'm like, who gives a fuck if he makes mean tweets or sleeps around, or, like, none of that matters to me, and compared to, like, the big stuff.
The big thing I think about the mean tweets thing is it's a very one-sided narrative.
Oh
Because
yeah.
nobody has been on the receiving end of more harassment than Donald Trump. Nobody.
Well,
Nobody has put up with the levels of consistent, like the reply guy is a thing that we created because people would ritualistically, every single time this man tweeted anything, no matter how innocuous, be like, "Poopy diaper daddy, you suck, I think you poop yourself." Like, nobody dealt with meaner tweets directed at them than Donald fucking Trump, right? And so to call his tweets mean at all is ridiculous in the context of, like, look at the fucking things. They literally profiled his son as being autistic for no reason. Barron was just there, and they're like, he doesn't talk to the media a lot. I think he has autism. It's like, no, you people are fucking vultures. Anybody who talks to Trump, you guys try and get him to say crazy fucking shit that probably didn't happen. No, Barron wants no part of you, and it has nothing to do with autism, whether he has autism or not. And if he has autism, then you just fucking doxed his fucking neurological condition. And if he doesn't have autism, it's still none of your fucking business.
Well, and also, like,
he was a child.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's the other thing too, is Barron was like, what, 10, 11 at the time?
12 at most. I think at most he was 12.
Well, even so, like, what are you gonna do? Like, ask the 12-year-old what his opinion is on, like, foreign policy? Like, no.
Yeah. And he's like, I like my school. You know,
yeah.
If you asked my 7-year-old his opinion on current political things, he'd probably tell you about a dragon. The kids don't follow this stuff.
Yeah, and we were told we couldn't talk about the Obama, daughters, which, hey, I was fine with that. But, when it comes to Trump kids, everything is fair game. That's basically what we were told. So,
Yeah, and it's funny because Obama's daughters are kind of hoes,
well, yeah,
and they were hoes even then. Like they're bigger hoes now.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I didn't really like now they definitely are. I honestly, when they were in the White House, I didn't give two shits about them.
I know. I just wanted to point out that they're hoes.
No, yeah, no. Well, I mean, listen, now they're fair game because they're putting it out there that they are.
I've always thought, there's some things that are fair game with presidential kids to some degree, right? But like this, like Barron sits in his room doing nothing. Entire media, he has autism. What the fuck is wrong with you people? That's so beyond the fucking pale. Or how about Kathy Griffin with cutting the fucking fake Trump head thing off, and Barron saw it on TV and was traumatized by it, and nobody cared about that. Oh yeah, let's just hold up a picture of this kid's dead dad's head.
I love their excuse. I love the excuse for that. I don't believe he was actually traumatized because the kid is 12 years old and he probably plays Call of Duty, which means he's seen like way worse than that fake head.
I don't know. All I'll say is it was a head that looked a lot like his dad's head being held up in a picture.
Yeah.
And presidential kids, they get the briefing, right? That it's possible that your parent could be killed, like, especially if they're older than like 10, right? And be like, look, things could happen. Secret Service is here to try and protect you. So like they know, like to some degree, a presidential kid knows that their parent is potentially a target, right? And so when he sees the fucking decapitated head and he's a little kid, yeah, he could be traumatized by that, even if he's seen worse in a video game, because the worst in the video game wasn't like a head that looked scarily like his father.
I mean, that head did not look like at first, even if Barron did realize later on that was fake, like at first glance, I mean, it freaked me out a bit too.
At first glance, I knew it was a fake fucking thing, but it wasn't my father's head, right? Like,
exactly.
And I'm also not like 10, so it's like it's a little different. I would say a little different. Not that you can't do. Like, I actually think Kathy Griffin, if she thought that was really really funny, whatever, right? I don't think it was a threat. I think it was just dumb on her part, and she thought she was really fucking funny. So I'm not for censorship. I'm just saying, show this kid his decapitated father in a picture, and he might have a fucking nightmare or two. He's a kid.
Yeah,
he's a fucking kid, and his father is probably the center of his fucking universe. If I were to take a guess.
Yeah, well, and also, Barron, right? Like Trump even said, or at one point, like, my son, I'll tell you, he's really good at the internet and stuff, right? Like I think Trump said that at one point, right? So Barron being online, like, I'm sure he's seen all the crazy like reply guys shit of like, people being like, I'm gonna kill you, or I'm gonna, put like a witch hex on you, or whatever the fuck people were, saying.
He gets it. Let alone seeing him say it about his dad. I've seen people say horrible things about Barron too, and I'm like, he's a kid. What has he ever done? What has he ever done for them to be mad at? He's a child. Well, I think he's grown now. It's been a while.
I think he's like a teenager at the most. So
I think he might be 18 though, is what I'm saying. Either way, though, at the time he's a child. He's a small child at that. When they first came into office, he was a small kid. This is all like crazy to him. Imagine you're 9 or 10 years old and your parent is the fucking president. That can't be easy.
Yeah, well, and then
it can't be easy for the Obama hose either. You know what I mean? Like in the Bush hose, for that matter.
The Bush hose who got like partying and streaking on the White House. Yeah.
Them hoes got white girl wasted. Yeah. The Obama hose actually are a little classier than the Bush hose. Just a little, like in hoe terms.
Oh yeah, there are stories about the Bush girls that I've heard.
Well, just imagine being the Bush girls. You know what I mean? It's kind of, never mind. No, like the crazy shit that gets said online. I could see that traumatizing a kid. I could see all of this shit traumatizing a kid. I bet you Barron's probably like pretty easygoing because of it, though.
Probably.
And I bet you the friends that he has at school or whatever, I bet you his friend circle is like tight as fuck, and they don't fucking talk to anybody else.
Well, I mean, yeah, you would imagine that, like.
Well, you haven't heard a lot of like Barron stories and Barron leaks, right? So his friends are probably somewhat loyal.
Oh yeah. Well, the kid's probably just like a giant nerd who just like, who knows? I mean,
that don't mean nothing. I was a giant nerd. I was still doing shit that I wouldn't want on the papers.
Well, okay, yeah, that's true. What I'm trying to say is Barron is like Aqaba, pretty much.
Oh, don't make that comparison, because now you're saying he does have autism.
Let's see.
Aqaba went to Japan, didn't he? Like, fucking nerd. Oh yeah, he did it.
He went to Japan, and he got. I did see one of his tweets. He got like 15 CDs. Of like he got the soundtrack for Racing Lagoon.
Okay, I mean, he seems happy.
Yeah, no, good on it. Good on him. So, speaking of gaming, though,
Halls of Torment. Yes.
Ack was not here to do gaming news, but you are, and you have some.
Okay. The first news is there's an early access game on Steam. It's called Halls of Torment, and it kicks fucking ass. It's like Vampire Survivors plus Diablo 1 combined. And I grabbed that the other day. It's like $5 or something. I grabbed it on Steam Deck. And like both times this week when we started the show, I was over here playing fucking Halls of Torment. And I'm like, yeah. Start the show, Sam. I'm just gonna finish this up.
So that's what you're playing.
Yeah, Halls of Torment. But the news, I guess, in gaming is Activision Blizzard did a Bud Light. And it's not good. It's not good. So I have strong feelings on this. I've been a fan of Blizzard Entertainment specifically for a very, very long time, since I was a kid. I played World of Warcraft for many years, not as obsessively as a lot of people. Like not giving up my whole life over it, but I certainly played a good amount, especially when I was younger, right? There's years where you have time to just play video games and nothing else to do. I played a lot of World of Warcraft. I still do. Last week, I was streaming over here on my Rumble channel doing hardcore World of Warcraft Classic because I had subscribed. I gave in Blizzard my money, and it came, weirdly enough, the subscription came up again today, and I canceled it. And I canceled it because Activision Blizzard is one company, two names, but it's one company. over at Activision, the other side of the company, they make a little game, you may have heard of it, called Call of Duty Warzone. Call of Duty generally, but specifically the Warzone, which is a very popular battle royale format game. One of the members of FaZe Clan, and I want to make sure that I get his name right. I believe it's Nick Merck. But
yeah,
and so yeah, follow him over on Twitter because he's having a rough day. But what happened was, all the stuff about grooming and drag queen story time and all that on Twitter, he made a comment where he specifically said he had no problem with pride. All he said is, I have no problem with pride or gay people, but just leave kids alone. Well, that was beyond the pale.
Yeah, literally what more than half the country believes, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that just leave kids alone.
A lot more. I would say a lot of Democrats believe that too. A lot of gay people even believe that.
Yeah. The fact that that is now considered controversial is fucking scary to me.
So how controversial is it, Max? Couldn't have been that big a deal, right? So in Call of Duty Warzone, they have a cash shop, right? Free to play game. They have a cash shop. That's normal. In the cash shop, there was a skin for this guy. It's a bundle pack where you could play his skin in like a custom version of his favorite weapon or some shit like that. Look, I don't play Warzone, so if I get those details wrong, I'm not sorry.
Nope, you're right. You're completely right.
So you get the skin pack for this guy, and Activision decided that they put out a statement. They said, we're pulling it so that we can celebrate Pride with our people. And they really didn't say much else. And also, it is questionable as to whether this man will be kicked out of FaZe Clan, which I'm not a big esports guy, but I've heard of FaZe Clan. I think they're one of the top esports organizations out there, and he's been with them for quite a long time. He's one of the more popular members. That's why he had a goddamn skin in the game, right? So basically, he's on the outs with them. And they're tripling down on, quote unquote, protecting trans kids. So there you go. Activision Blizzard supports grooming children. And that was when I canceled my WoW subscription today. And I'm so glad I didn't pick up Diablo 4 either. If you haven't, don't. It's good. I played the demo or the beta or whatever. Diablo 4 is good. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying if you haven't bought it, don't give these people your money.
Now, is Activision... Now, I could be wrong, and I could probably also look this up, but I'm a lazy cripple, so I'll just ask you. Is Activision the one that, like, published the Call of Duty Black Ops series?
Every single Call of Duty game was under the Activision banner until they merged with Activision Blizzard in 2009, I think. 2008 to 2009.
Well, fuck, I guess.
But Call of Duty is an Activision only. It's only ever been published by Activision.
I guess that's another franchise that's getting the Bud Light treatment.
We'll see. Gamers are tough. Gamer boycotts, I'll tell you, they never ever work. More than even normal boycotts, because gamers, like I said, don't buy Diablo 4 if you don't want a company, grooming children. But there's a lot of motherfuckers even listening to this show that are going to buy that game because it's the hot new thing.
Yeah.
You can't do it. I've boycotted Blizzard a couple times over the years. I just came back because they fired the guy for saying free. Well, they suspended the guy and took away his winnings for saying free Hong Kong. And then they fired the commentators who were there, who didn't say anything about it. I was like, fuck you, Blizzard. Free Hong Kong. And so when I canceled my subscription and it said, what is your comment? I said, free Hong Kong. And I stayed away for about 2 years until they got some new management in there. They had... things seem to be on the up and up. So I gave Blizzard another chance, and already they've fucking thrown it in the fucking grinder. And so when I canceled my WoW subscription this time, I just said, okay, groomer. That's my comment.
Well, okay. The reason why I'm bummed out is because I played Call of Duty Cold War,
Mm-hmm.
and like Call of Duty Cold War, out of all the Black Ops, like Black Ops 1 is pretty good, and Black Ops 2 is. Black Ops 3 gets pretty fucking weird because it like takes place in the future.
Also,
But
it had no story campaign.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I think you're thinking of the fourth one. It's the mostly future stuff. But yeah, they've had some good Call of Duty games. And you mentioned Cold War. Cold War had a bit of a right-wing bent to it, right? Reagan literally tells you what to do. Here's the thing. The creative types that work on that kind of stuff aren't the kind of people running a social media account and dealing with a scandal like this, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of HR cat ladies didn't like what FaZe Clan Nick Burke said, and so he needs to be canceled now. Get him out of the store. It's Pride Month. You're hurting people. You're killing people. Ugh.
Yeah, no, it is a shame, and yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like the campaign of Cold War, like it does have like a bit of a right wing like espionage type thing, and a certain based cripple man might be writing a political thriller of that same genre. So
the creative side of Call of Duty has been pretty good the last couple of years. You know, hit and miss. I mean, Vanguard was a little on the glorifying the Soviet side of things, but no, this ain't got nothing to do with the game, really. I think it has to do more with like cat ladies in the office. But either way, leave the kids alone. That's all he was saying, and I agree with that. And so I am no longer going to be. This hurts, but I'm no longer going to be buying Activision Blizzard anything until this is rectified somehow, and I don't even know how they could.
Yeah.
So
well,
that sucks, but there's like I say, I'm always pointing out indie games on the show. Like whenever you say something, I'm like, first thing, let me talk about Dave the Diver. Get into indie games, guys. Like, they're so good. It's a golden age. And also, you don't have to worry about a lot of this woke shit because a lot of indie games are either expressly political and you will know it before you buy it, or they're non-political at all.
Well, one of the games that you actually recommended, I don't know if how much we can talk at this, but one of the games that you recommended was 6 Days of Fallujah.
Right, and they released a demo just to content creators about 6 Days in Fallujah. So I've watched quite a bit of the gameplay footage. Devil Dog Gamer was actually at the Battle of Fallujah and is a Marine, and he has a great. I've followed his YouTube channel for years and years. He's probably one of the best Let's Players out there that a lot of people don't know about, but he added a lot to it because he's like, yeah, this is what it's like. Oh no, this isn't quite right. But like the game itself, to recreate the Battle of Fallujah, and for those that don't know, the Battle of Fallujah in Iraq, the second Battle of Fallujah specifically, was basically our grunts cleared every house in Fallujah like a SWAT team. And we lost a lot of good men in Fallujah. And it was one of, it's probably the most prolific modern battle America has been in terms of a war battle. And those men they walked through hell and they did the job. And as much as it sucks that we lost a lot of fine men, including a friend of mine that's literally the guy that stood next to me at graduation. However, the absolute, like, above and beyond the Call of Duty that those men all went through, doing something that had never been done. Clearing a city house by house had never been done. And it was an impossible task that they were given, and they did it. So this game tries to recreate that by house layouts change every time you load up the map's different. The houses are different, the streets are different, where enemies are placed are different, where civilians are placed is different. And if you shoot civilians, it fucks you over. You're not supposed to. But you'll run into a house and there'll be a family full of civilians, because that's what actually happened in Fallujah. And the gunplay is really realistic. The sound design is amazing. From everything I've seen, it sounds, I've never been in a battle, so I can't say it sounds like a battle. What I can say is it sounds an awful lot like being on a big gun range, you know what I mean? With shit popping off in different directions.
It sounds like what you would imagine a battle would be like, though, right?
And Devil Dog says it sounds a lot like what a battle sounds like. So I'll take his word for that.
Yeah.
But
is it a first person shooter?
Yes.
Okay.
First person shooter. It's coming out very, very soon. This was like the first big test. They only gave out one level. But the crazy part is that one level, you could play it and it's never going to be the same. You know, you go through it, but every house changes where the enemies are, but not just like some games will switch up where the enemy placements are on a map, right? But this switches up the map itself too. So now this street's now over here, and this house now has a stairway upstairs where it didn't before. And this house is a double decker where it used to be a single decker, right? Like everything changes. And another thing that's really cool is they really played with the light, which is a lot of soldiers will talk about. The hardest part of kicking in those doors is because Iraqis didn't have a lot of power at the time. There's not a lot of lights on in anybody's home, if any. And so adjusting from bright desert to pitch dark house is where you get shot most of the time, because your eyes need a second and their eyes are already adjusted and they can see you coming in long before you can see them. And it does seem to, I haven't played it, like I said, but it does seem to capture that kind of tension. It seems to be probably one of the most historically accurate first-person shooters I've ever seen. They have veterans on the team that fought in Iraq. They have veterans on the creative staff, and they're using veteran stories to tell the campaign of the game. So,
wow.
I am a big supporter of the project. I think, which listed on Steam. You know, you got nothing to lose. It's free. It looks real good. Check out Devil Dog Gamer playing 6 Days in Fallujah. I can't wait. I'll probably stream that one because it looks right up my alley.
And this is an independent game company?
Yes, they are independent. There was originally, I believe it was Konami, originally pitched a game called 6 Days in Fallujah in 2005 or 6, and then it just got shelved for like 10 years, and this new company picked it up, and I want to get their name right, so forgive me. I'm looking at their Steam thing right now.
Not a problem. I'm just asking because
Highwire Games. And what have they made before this? This is their first project, actually. So, but it is a lot of industry veterans from other companies.
Well, I'm asking because this could be an opportunity to maybe get some, people in the gaming industry on the show. Maybe. Yeah,
I talked to a lot of indie devs. It happens when you're like shouting out indie dev stuff all the time, like I try to do. And I think I probably could fucking ask them for some kind of statement because the controversy is insane. So the left hates this game because they're saying that it's just glorifying war crimes, which it's not. They don't know what war crimes mean by and large, but that's
no.
Just killing somebody in a war is not a war crime. Sorry, leftists, it's just not. A war crime is kind of going outside of the fucking rules of engagement, which absolutely there were some U.S. soldiers that have done that throughout history. But to say that everybody that fought in Fallujah committed war crimes makes you insane to say that. So that's an insane thing to say, right? So I'll say this. of, not including like older war veterans, right? So not including Vietnam vets, not including like World War II vets, anything like that. Just of our generation, millennials and even a little younger, the guys that fought in Fallujah are probably some of the best. Like, think about what they went up against. Ignore that the war was bullshit. I'm anti-war as fuck, especially Iraq. Right? I was super anti-Iraq right from the beginning. But that doesn't take away the fact that what these gentlemen did was exceptional. Like, insane. Like, think about this. Do you have the balls to kick in a door where there might be people waiting to shoot you?
No.
How about to do that 1,000 times in a week?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah. And they did. And they had to clear every fucking room of every house on every block in that whole fucking city, that whole godforsaken city. And you want to talk about they used white phosphorus? Yeah. That doesn't mean that Private Joe Schmo committed a war crime. Anyway, the left is trying to bury this game. I highly recommend you wishlist it on Steam.
Of course, they're trying to bury it. I mean, this is the other thing. Like, for as much as people might hate George Bush and be against the war, there's no reason to hate the soldiers who went over there, because a lot of the soldiers, they thought they were fighting for, they thought the war was justified.
I'll tell you that a lot of them might not think that now either, right?
Not now, but back.
The thing is one thing that's universal to most, if I can't say all because there's exceptions, but most people who served, is like, they're just doing their job at that point. Once you're there, that's your job. You know what I mean? And they do it. Like, a lot of guys didn't necessarily agree with what the higher ups were doing or the politics of the day. But when they say, okay, this house has 5 bad guys in it, we need you to go get there, they're going to go do it. And that, I don't know, people will point out, oh, well, they're just sheep or whatever. Like, there's a lot of people that hate military and veterans and will make every excuse to say they're horrible people. But to call all of them war criminals, it was just, I've never, and that was from Kotaku specifically. So it's understandable that Kotaku would say that. But like all the major gaming publications, they're having a blackout on media coverage of this, which doesn't matter because, like I said, they gave the demo to all these like streamers and YouTubers. And you know what? Every single one they gave it to was a fucking veteran. Fuck you, Kotaku. You know who gets early access? Not you. Some veterans that fucking can tell you, hey, this is a really realistic game. You know what Devil Dog Gamer said? He said it gave him a little bit of PTSD. It was so real.
Damn.
And he plays he plays shooter games basically for a living. He plays all the military shooters.
Oh yeah, well, that's the funny thing is, like, I know guys who served over in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I'm like, I once asked one of them, I'm like, wouldn't it, like, and they have PTSD, right? That's something they struggle through, and I asked them, I'm like, not to be impolite, but wouldn't playing like Call of Duty or something, wouldn't that like trigger your PTSD? Nah, bro, that if anything, that's like the way I fucking relax after a day at work. Like I crack a beer and
yeah, I was gonna say it's like the guy, it's like a NASCAR driver, right? And then he plays what is it, Gran Turismo in his off time.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. A lot of these guys, look, they like guns. You get into the military, you're gonna like guns.
Oh,
if you like guns,
they love guns.
Yeah, if you like guns, there's some pretty dope shooters with very realistic guns these days, and no shortage of. I mean, there's Squad, there's Arma. Now there's gonna be 6 Days in Fallujah, Insurgency Sandstorm, CS:GO to some degree. I'm not the biggest CS. I love Valve.
Yeah.
I'm such a Valve fanboy, but CS:GO is just not my jam. I hate to say it. But
No,
6 days in Fallujah, it might be, and I'm looking forward to that. It's co-op. And it's not going to be like a story, campaign game as I understand it. It's going to be set up a mission because the map changes each time. It's going to be, this was the mission. Go do this mission and then move to the next mission. And the missions are all going to be based, like the briefings are going to be based on stories of veterans who actually fought in Fallujah. So realistic, hopefully. It looks very realistic. It looks great. I could talk. See, I'm so positive about indie games. I could talk about them all day. I talked about this longer than I talked about Blizzard being retarded or Activision being retarded. So,
yeah. Well,
don't buy Diablo 4. Go buy fucking 6 Days of Fallujah. You'll thank me later.
Well, and and this is the thing with the free for all is we've bitched about DeSantis and how bad things are under Biden, but hey, we're also talking games. Speaking of things to be positive about though, Max, I am quite proud of myself because I might not be as much of a troll as you or Shmuley, but I got under the skin of one Stephen King, or at least his fanatical cult readership.
Of which I find myself a member, though he's gone crazy in the last few years. I've read almost every book he's ever written, including some of the ones since he's gone crazy. And guess what? Here's an unpopular Stephen King opinion. Even the stuff he puts out now, even some of the stuff that has like literal anti-Trump stuff in it, is still good. He's still a good writer. He's crazy. He's a political asshole. But read Billy Summers, which just came out recently and has a whole bunch of anti-Trump shit in it. Of course, it's like this character is pro-Trump and he's a bad person or whatever. It's not really clever. Okay. But despite how annoying I find that, despite how crazy he is, it's a good book.
So he doesn't have Pennywise dressed up in like a MAGA hat or something weird like.
No, that's the thing, is like he's not been on drugs in a very long time, and his modern books are much more grounded in that respect. There's no clowns anymore. Mr. Mercedes, as well as Billy Summers, both contain nothing supernatural at all. Well, Billy Summers has like an Easter egg callback to The Shining because they're at the spot where the hotel was, and so there's like spooky paintings or whatever, but it's just an Easter egg. Like a lot of Stephen King's work that he writes now has no supernatural in it at all.
Yes.
And that's been true since like the 90s.
Well, so for the people who
but he's still a raving leftist, so go ahead.
Yeah, my view on Stephen King is I tried to read Misery, and I couldn't get in.
What an awful one to start with.
So that's my problem. Yeah, I started with Misery, and I'm like, God.
Misery is a great film based on a mediocre at best novel.
Yeah.
The film kills it. The novel, she's a little more evil in the novel, but other than that.
Okay, so that's interesting because my opinion of Stephen King is, wow, this guy is fucking overrated.
Yeah, see, I don't think so. I think he's one of the best character writers that there is. But he was also like in his prime, he was on ungodly amounts of drugs, so all that shit's weird. And now that he's off drugs, a lot of like his druggy era fans don't like his new stuff. because it's still character driven, which is what I like about him. The man writes a good character, and the characters take on life of their own. And the way he said that he writes stories and is not necessarily like, okay, this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the end. It's more like, how would this character react to this happening? And then from there, how would they react to it, that happening? So these very character driven stories. Sometimes that works, sometimes not so much, especially like Misery, where there's only really 2 characters. I think you can get real in depth on those 2 characters, but there's only 2. Usually it's the interplay of several characters with clear but differing motivations that make, like,
Right.
the Stand is one of his best for that reason, because there's all these like interesting people separated from each other, many a times having no idea what the others are doing or even if they exist, and then they clash in interesting ways.
Okay,
That's what he's good at.
Okay, well, fuck. I might have to give another chance. See, do you see what you did, Max? Do you see what you did?
I wouldn't even say so though, because like, well, unless you go to the library, don't give him any money. I haven't in a long time.
Yeah.
People buy me his new book. I can't really, like, I got that Billy Summers. I got that as like a birthday present or something, but usually I don't like to give him money because he's crazy.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, he is crazy, and this is what we okay. So back when I joined Twitter, I followed Stephen King, and it was because he's like, for those who are unfamiliar somehow, when you set up a brand new Twitter handle, Twitter like gives you like a bunch of suggestions of people to follow, and if you like and it goes based off your interests, and if you like books, Stephen King is almost always one of the authors that they recommend that you follow by default.
And rightly so. Like, no matter what you think about him, he's the best. He's the best-selling author of all time, except the authors of the Bible. So it makes sense why he would be the one. But I do think that that's unfortunate, because then they, like, people who are big fans of him. And the first time I encountered his crazy was on Twitter. I was like, I didn't know Stephen King was out of his fucking mind. Interesting.
Yeah, right. So, right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So I've been following him basically since I was on Twitter, and I've just slowly noticed that he's gotten like, so okay. So the genesis of this whole thing is, right, last Saturday, Stephen King quote tweeted Dan Bongino, who said, and Dan Bongino went on this whole thing. He's very pro MAGA, and Dan Bongino basically said Joe Biden is the worst president in history, or something like that. Stephen King had the audacity to quote tweet him and say, "You're a broken record. Get a job." Right, and it was the "get a job" comment that really kind of irked me. And so I didn't quote tweet it, but I just simply replied, you first. And that was my reply to him. That sent the legion of Stephen King fans, the deranged ones, to be like, oh my God, this guy, this Sam Whitfield guy is an idiot. He's telling the best-selling, author to basically get a job. This guy is a moron.
Yeah, well, he's telling a fucking social media mogul CEO to get a job. So who's the idiot?
Well,
you were literally throwing it right back in his face. You're telling this tech CEO to get a job. You get a fucking job.
Yeah, and that was my whole point. I was basically throwing his words right back at him. Like if you don't consider Dan Bongino, like, who does commentary and does all this different stuff. Like that isn't whether you like or whether you like him or not. Like he does have a job, and
his job seems even more stressful since he left Fox. It doesn't seem like he slowed down, if anything.
Yeah, so he does have an actual job, right? But Stephen King doesn't think so. So he's like, get a job. I merely threw it back at him, and yet people lost.
Well, you autistically play with characters in your head all day. Is that a job, Stephen King? Is it? Just because you get paid for it, does it make it a job?
Yeah, that was literally what I was like trying to explain to a couple of these people. And by the way,
also he's got money to where if he never published another novel again, I mean, he's not going to be hurting.
Yeah, no, that's why I find his comment. That's why I find his comments on like Elon Musk being too rich and having too much money to be like quite bizarre. It's like, dude, you're literally in the same economic bracket as Elon.
He can't spend the money faster than it comes in for old books and shit, and royalties on films and shit.
Yeah, so again, the get a job comment like was just really, weird coming from him. And the fact that I replied you first, and that out of all the tweets I've tweeted on Twitter, that got 12,000 views.
It seems like you took a page out of the Shmuley playbook of the simple retorts like "no, you" or "you first," and it's extremely more effective than you think it would be. Like sounds funny. It sounds funny that you're gonna reply with "no, you" or "you first" or whatever, and it's like nobody would do. But they get so fucking mad.
That's what surprised me. Is that I tweeted. So I tweeted the "you first" thing like literally before I went to bed. Like I tweeted "you first." I put my phone on like airplane mode. Went to bed. Woke up. Got my phone. Next thing I know, 60 notifications on Twitter. All replies on that one tweet. It's gotten 1,000 views overnight and counting. I'm like, what the fuck? I put zero effort into this tweet.
That's what always happens to me. The most upvoted shit I've ever had was like a dick joke about Count Dankula. Right? I made a dick joke about Count Dankula and got like 10,000 likes. It's like, what the fuck? I put zero effort into that. But speaking of making people angry, it is past 1 a.m. and my wife is asking when I'm gonna wrap this up.
Oh, yeah. Now see, unlike Stephen King, she will kill you.
She will, yeah.
So yeah,
in my sleep,
and it's 1 a.m. here too. So yeah, we've been going for a while. So I think that just about wraps it up. But
I feel like I made up for ducking out early the other day. We covered some fun shit.
Yeah, we definitely did. So, thanks for co-hosting as always, and thanks to you folks for tuning in. And Silly Kelly did say that he used the promo code from Shade Rays, so good on you. I hope you got something you liked. And awesome. For everyone else, until next time, God bless, and we'll talk at you down the road.
Thanks for listening to The Whitfield Report on the NGC Network. Please visit Sam's website at www.thesamwhitfield.com and support Sam on Patreon at patreon.com/Whitfield Report. Until next time, God bless, God save this great nation, and God, freedom, legacy, in that order.